What's going on, guys? Dropadooski here. Today we're going to do our second in the crafting series, and this one's going to be all about belts. Now, if you didn't see the first one is jewels and flasks. That video will be linked in the description below. This is going to be the first time we use any item that has the max 3 prefixes and suffixes. Plus, with belts, you're also dealing with implicit, so it's going to be a little more complex than our first video. The goal of today's vid, so I want to break this down for you guys. Because we can't literally craft every single potential profitable belt, we're going to take one belt. So I'm going to go through the process of what bases I think are the ones to look for. Then we're going to look for something that has survivability, so life or energy shields, multiple resistances, and then hopefully a little bit of damage. I'm going to craft it in 2 different ways, so once with currencies and then once with fossils, and then from there you can go out and start messing around with other belts and hopefully make a lot more currency utilizing this. So let me know what you guys think of this process in the comments below, and if it goes well, we'll use this as our methodology for the next crafting videos focusing on other items that you could potentially make money on. So without further ado, let's jump into it and see the belts. The first thing we're going to talk about is picking belts to craft with in Path of Exile. Now, there are 9 different belts that you can choose from. At any given point, these are going to be dropping all over the place. I always ID all belts. If you get lucky and hit, max life, triple res on a chain belt, for instance, you can still throw it up and potentially make a couple C, so you can start stockpiling some currency. But when we're talking about going out of our way to craft, the 3 that I like to use the most are Stygian Vise, Crystal Belt, and Leather Belt. Now, the reason behind that is because of their implicit. If you don't know what an implicit is, when you hold with advanced modifiers, you use Alt, you can see at the very top, above your prefixes and suffixes, there is the implicit modifier. The implicit on a Stygian Vise is an abyssal socket, making it super powerful for a lot of builds in the game. The implicit on a crystal belt is high energy shield, so between 60 and 80, and the implicit on a leather belt is max life. So a lot of builds out there that are going to be really heavy on the max life, RF, other things like that, will either be using a leather belt or a shaped leather belt in most instances. Now, the caveat to this is I will sometimes craft with these here in the center, so that Vanguard is armor evasion, a Rustic Sash is really good for those physical based builds, and then you're also looking at heavy belts occasionally with a ton of strength. If you're running at a character that needs strength and isn't going to get a lot from the tree, a heavy belt can be very beneficial. Some that I will never ever craft with, chain belts, because the energy shield implicit there is so low. It's between 9 and 20 versus the crystal. Really no reason to go out of your way to craft these, in my opinion, because most energy shield based characters are just going to wait and use a crystal when they can. The other 2 are studded and cloth. It's stun and block recovery. I've never made one of these. That doesn't mean that there isn't some weird niche thing out there that somebody, oh yeah, I have to have a cloth belt. I've never heard of it, never seen it. I wouldn't waste currency on these. So for today's example, we're going to go ahead and utilize the Stygian because I think it's the most used belt from what I've seen across all the builds that I've played. And once again, we're going to be trying to hit, max life, double res, or energy shield, double res, or something like that. Let's jump into currency crafting first, and then we'll hit the fossils. The first thing we're going to talk about today is crafting with currencies. Now, currencies is not my preferred route when going for belts specifically. I do like using fossils, but early on, especially when we haven't got a lot of sulfite, we haven't farmed up any fossils or enough currency, buy a stockpile of fossils, you can use the stuff we used on flasks and jewels to make yourself a belt that'll balance out your resistances. Sometimes the goal is not to make a ton of currency off of an item that you're crafting. Sometimes you can use it a lot more functionally to make something to help you out to then farm more currency and buy some of those bigger upgrades. So when I'm using this route that you've seen in the previous video, it's once again transmutations, and remember we're going for max life and resistance. So right here we've got 34 and 54 armor. We could immediately regal this and see if we get lucky. So just that quickly, now it's not always going to go this way. I know this is some streamer, YouTuber RNG right now, but we've got 48 fire, 48 cold, or 34 cold, and 54 armor on this Stygian Vise. So from this point, we would come over here, toss some max life at it, and say we're running low, so we don't want to keep spamming and re-rolling that right away. If this was day 1, we just got to end game day 2, and I needed a Stygian Vise with some resistance, this is good to go. You could use this right off the bat. Now, of course, you could also try and sell this thing. I think in day 1 or 2, you could probably sell this for a couple C and potentially buy yourself another belt that that's going to more fit your criteria. This is a really solid early game belt. So from here, we've already achieved what we're looking for with currencies. That's the exact route that we did with jewels. My other alternative route of crafting belts is utilizing alchemies and chaos orbs. Now, alchemies, not that you have a ton of them early on, but a lot of times you don't need a ton to get something that's going to be at least useful or worth a little bit. So with alchemy orbs, what this does is it upgrades this belt into a rare item. So you can get a full 6 prefixes or 3 prefixes, 3 suffixes, or any combination of those. Rather than in this route, you're going to be trapped at that 4 marker, right? You're not going to get beyond 4 going this route without slamming or multi-modding or etc. So with alchemies, we can use them and immediately get a whole bunch of stats. What you can do from there is you have 2 options. You can either use a couple of chaos, which is very dangerous, especially early in the league because you're not going to have a ton. But I do want to mention this, and you can use a chaos to completely reforge that rare. But a lot of times what I'll do, and see, just like that, we did get something decent. I mean, this has got 79, 81 max life, some energy shield, fire res, lightning res, and then the stun duration, which I don't typically want. But then we also have an open prefix. So depending on what we had on our bench, we could take this, throw, let's say we're early and we only have a little bit of currency. We could throw a little bit of alterations at it and put some elemental damage with the tax on there. Make ourselves a belt that would probably sell for a few C at the beginning of the league, and you could definitely use on a character of your own. Now, one other thing I want to mention about this belt, and it has to be something we talk about when it comes to crafting, is the implicit. Now, the implicit on an item is at the very top of this with advanced modifiers on. If you don't know about that, check the video in the description below. With advanced modifiers on and you're holding Alt, you can see we have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, and then at the top there's an implicit. That implicit tells us what this belt is. You can re-roll those implicits using Blessed Orbs. Blessed Orbs change, as you can see, randomizes the numeric values of the implicit modifiers of an item. There's no reason to run around with 29 out of 40 max life on any given belt that has an implicit that you can change. You can hit this with a couple of Blessed Orbs and get it maxed out very, very quickly. I do this with every item that I craft. It just increases its value, especially if you were going out to price this belt right now. You could then do the pseudo max life, and you're gonna, incorporate all of the max life you got on the prefix roll, plus this is creeping that number up, showing you that this belt would be worth just a little bit more as you're looking for things to sell throughout the league. You always want to get as much as you possibly can when crafting for a profit. Now, of course, right now this is worth next to nothing. We're at the end of a league. Everybody's been maxing their character. But early on, even there, if those were the standard prices and you could get, 5 alchemies or a handful of fusings or whatever, we didn't spend all that much. And I know early in the league, it would probably sell for 4 or 5 C. It's going to be something that's going to be worth a lot more in value because there's not a lot of belts floating around that look this good right off the bat. Some things I'm briefly going to mention, even though we're not going to dive into them right now, we are going to do a guide on more expensive, currency-based crafting is, as we said before, the annulments can remove a modifier. These are very nice and good to sell early if you don't know how to use them, but you can potentially hit this item, hit the stun duration and get it off of there, and that frees up a suffix. You can then use a divine orb, which will re-roll all of the affixes on this item. So we've only got 53 out of 59 max life. You could use a divine and potentially bring that up to 59, bring the 31 fire to 35, etc. And then the last thing I'm going to mention, but I do not recommend it for brand new crafters, is utilizing your Exalt orbs. Exalt orbs would take this. We cannot do it on the leather belt because the leather belt is maxed, right? It has 3 prefixes, 3 suffixes. You don't get any more than that. But here, if we wanted to go for the big shebang with this and try and get something else useful, we could then take an Exile and slam it, and that would add another random prefix or suffix as it reads. Enchants a rare item with a new random modifier. So later on, we'll be doing a video on more expensive currency crafting, where we'll talk about blocking things and using Exiles to get some godly crazy items. From here, let's jump on over into fossils, and I'll show you how easy it is to make belts with fossils and how profitable it can be. Okay, now that we're jumping into the alternative fossil crafting route for belts, I have made so many amazing belts with fossils throughout the last couple of leagues. It is by far the best way, in my opinion, to go after very targeted, really cool survivability / damage based belts. So what we're going to talk about first is a tool that you guys can use. Now this tool is super awesome. I will put this in the link in the description below, but what this enables you to do is track down different types. So we're doing belts today. We have all the list of the available fossils here at the top of the website, and what we can do is kind of take a look at what we would specifically want to get on our belt. Now what I like to do for belts is use 3 different fossils. It's going to be the type of survivability we're chasing. So for right now's example, we're going for max life, which would be pristine, so more life modifiers. And then I go with elemental. So let's pick pristine here just so we can show this tool's usage. So pristine is going to remove a whole bunch of different prefixes that we could potentially have hit before. Now that we're using pristine, we can only hit max life, elemental damage with attacks, flash life recovery, etc. We're going to use an elemental one. So our elemental fossil is called prismatic, more elemental modifiers. This I'm adding so that we have a higher likelihood of hitting the resistances that we want, right? So prismatic, we pop this in, block out a couple of more affixes. So as you can see in the darker blue, the resistances are highlighted, right? It's more likely for me to hit those with this fossil combination. So right now, everything that is dark blue on this tool are things that I am more likely to hit. Then you could just do that, right? You could just do that. But to make something a little more special or unique, something that might be of more value, I want to now target another element, right? I want to target another, cold or fire. So if I wanted to add flat fire damage to this item, right? So in the God scenario, you could get something with like max life, double res, fire damage, elemental damage, right? You could hit that. It's theoretically possible with this fossil combination. I did actually hit something very similar to that for my Arc Miner build using fossils, and that belt itself right there is going to be worth multiple Exiles, right? Immediately. It's going to be really powerful. So today what we're going to focus is fire. I'm running around on Molten Strike, so I figure, we're just going to go for fire. So with the default Stygian Vise, this one is eye level 83, so it's up in that top eye level range. We're going to take our powerful alchemical resonator, which is for a normal item, and we're going to pop in the pristine, the prismatic, and the fire. Hit this. And so, as you can see, we've gotten 22% increased fire damage, 73% max life, pretty decent life roll, 45% fire resistance, and then we've got flask mana recovery rate, which isn't great, but it's okay to be there. Now, if we went to our bench with this belt, we could just to make something that's of more value, hit it with an extra resistance, and now we've got ourselves a fire belt with 73 max life, fire res, cold res, and flask recovery. Let's see what this thing is going to be worth just out of curiosity. So we'll select all. Let's get the flask off there because I don't care about it. We're going to remove our maximums to widen our search, and then let's pop it on PoE and see if we get any results. Boom, 100C. That was 2 weeks ago. We've got a 1 week ago for 1x. Granted, it has a little lightning on it, but these belts, crafting belts in this way, is very strong. Now, obviously, some of these that are listed are going to be more powerful than the one that we have, right? This is 6x Ours is not worth 6x, but I definitely think ours is worth about 80, 90 chaos easily. Just right there. So one fossil craft, and we've got ourselves a belt that was worth nothing. Now it's worth a pretty good chunk of chaos. And early in the league, this thing would definitely sell. Since for time's sake, since we've got ourselves a little bit, we've gotten one that quickly, let's make one more belt. I think we'll make another belt. Let's pull this one down because it hasn't sold in a while. And we're gonna go with an alternative element here. So we've scoured it down. We're gonna need one more default or normal. We could have left it rare and used our powerful chaotic. Powerful chaotic will reforge a rare, but I always like to start base. I'm one of those weirds. So we throw in our life, our elemental, and our cold modifier, and boom, hit this belt. Now, this is more like it, right? We did not hit something worth a ton of currency right away, but you get the idea, right? So using the tool blocks a bunch of different things. You can see before you waste any materials what you want to target and what you have a higher likelihood of hitting with the fossils. And now that it's rare and we don't really like this one because the life roll is really low, let's try it again. We'll use our yellows. We'll pop a cold in there. Element, and see if we can get lucky again. This has two really good damage rolls on it. We've got 28 increased elemental damage and 20 cold damage. Now, one thing I want to touch on here, since we're covering this in regards to fossils, is fossils provide unique affixes to items. So since we're using belts, remember, always use PoE affix. If we go down here to the bottom, delve suffixes. Delve suffixes include increased ball skill damage, mana recovery rate, elemental damage, as you saw we hit on that belt that we have right now. On the elder or on the prefix delve side, fire, cold, lightning, global physical, chaos. Those are only attained by doing fossil crafting. So when you're going for those very, very pricey, expensive Stygian Vise belts, 100% I recommend going with fossils. Now, I did give you the example where we didn't use fossils on purpose. You're not always going to have access to a ton of fossils immediately early on in the league. So if you don't and you want to use currency, use currency. You can still get away with making yourself something that's very, very nice. I had to pause for a second because this belt is disgusting. Okay, so we're going to go to the bench real quick. We did the same combination that we talked about for our first belt. We got 90 max life, 20 fire damage, 26 fire resistance, and 25 increased elemental damage. That's what we were talking about as our god roll from the beginning of the video. In this scenario, we now add another resistance, and I want that to be high. I want it max roll resistance. 35 cold, 26 fire, 25 increased elemental damage, 20 fire damage. Both of those are delve specific affixes, and 90 max life. Let's price this belt just to see. 1x, 4x. And I would say we could probably get about 2x for this belt. 2 to 3x easy. It's really that easy to make these belts. Guys, get out there, start grabbing fossils, and start slaying these belts. Alright guys, that covers everything I wanted to touch on. Now before we wrap up, there is one thing I want to note. We've had a lot of people in the comments in the last video talking about things in regards to corrupting items and slamming items, etc. I want you guys to know we will be doing independent videos in taking into account more high-level things like shooting for very specific corruptions or utilizing exalted orbs on items. These beginning videos are purely targeted for giving people that introduction into crafting, and then we'll get into the more technical / very expensive types of crafting that we'll do later down the line. Guys, thank you so much for checking this out. Don't forget, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that button, throw a like on the video, let me know what you guys want to see. I think the next one we're going to do in this series is jewelry, so we'll do rings and amulets, and then we'll work our way into helms and body armors and all that good stuff. We've got a lot of positive feedback on the jewels and flasks video. Let me know what you think of this one. The armor slots are going to be a little more, there's going to be a little more to them, so I liked or wanted to try this route of, you know, going through picking it, then figuring out what we need on it, and then showing you alternative ways to craft. So let me know what you thought of that, guys. Thank you so much for checking this out. Don't forget I stream on Twitch 5 days a week. That's twitch.tv/Strapadusky. If you have any questions and you see that I'm on live, come on by, hang out, ask them there, and we can, you know, have a conversation and help you get whatever you're trying to craft set up and ready to go. Thanks, guys, again. Good luck out there, and slay those maps and get those god drops, boys. Peace.